Welcome back, guys. So doing my first video here after going to the driver advisory board meeting, our first driver advisory board meeting in over a year, that was held in person in Springfield. 2nd of March was the actual date of the DAB meeting. And I'm sure many of you, and by reading the title of this video, you'll know what I'm going to talk about. But I'm sure many of you that follow Prime or other people who do videos will know the big topic that came out of that meeting, and that is the training update. Simply put, we'll just put it out in front if you haven't heard it. Prime has reduced the miles for the TNT, trainer and trainee phase, from 50,000 miles back down to 30,000 miles for reefer and for flatbed. One thing that I know has not been getting a lot of coverage is the tanker was at 35,000 miles when they increased that mileage up, and that has been dropped from 35 to 25,000 miles with this new update. So I want to get that information out, and that is retroactive. So that is active as of now. It was announced on Wednesday the 3rd officially by Prime. It was talked about at our meeting for driver advisory board on the 2nd, and like I said, if anyone is currently at Prime and in the training program, this will apply to you. You won't have to, just because you're currently in training, have to still complete the 50,000 miles. They're going to start, if anyone's over 30 or just about at 30, once you get to that point, they'll start the assessment for bringing you into to upgrade. One thing that they did, which I thought was fantastic, and I have a lot of notes here from my meeting that I want to talk a little bit more about, but I want to talk about training first. There's always a lot of questions about, okay, well, it's 50,000 miles, or now it's 30,000 miles. That's it. I got my 50,000 miles. I got my 30,000 miles. I can come in and get a truck. And one of the things that they clarified that I thought was fantastic was the process for that, because those mileage figures are actually minimum mileage figures. So you have to have a minimum of now 30,000 miles in reefer or flatbed, or 25,000 miles in tanker, and then you become eligible to upgrade depending on, and the depending on was always the big, well, depending on what? And of course, it's depending on your trainer. Your trainer has to say you're ready to upgrade. It's depending on you. If you don't feel you're ready to upgrade, you don't have to upgrade. In fact, I've been talking with a driver. He upgraded maybe a month ago, who voluntarily stayed on in tanker, and this is during the 35,000, the 50,000 for reefer. He ended up staying on for about 50,000 miles in tanker, partially because he wanted to continue and get additional training and get some winter driving experience. So he voluntarily stayed on, even though he had gotten all of the, his trainer, if he had wanted to upgrade, would have approved him. Safety probably would have approved him. His fleet manager would have approved him. And those are the 3 approvals that you need. But the other thing that I thought was great is that Prime clarified, well, what is the thing that safety is going to look at? Because trainers going to make their own assessment. Trainer's going to look and say, well, here's the reason that I think you're ready, or here's the reason I don't think you're ready. Fleet manager, same thing. You should be in contact with your fleet manager, and that's something that I'm surprised doesn't happen as often as it should. When you're in training, you should be in contact with your trainer's fleet manager. In fact, you should be talking to them weekly. That's how they know, are you learning what you're supposed to learn, or are you not learning what you're supposed to learn? So you should be in contact with your fleet manager. Otherwise, how are they going to? They're just going to rely on what the trainer says. And if the trainer says, hey, he knows what he's doing, but you don't feel like you've learned what you should have learned to be able to run a truck on your own, you're not going to be able to pass that along. So that's something to be sure you do if you are in the trainer and trainee TNT portion of your training. And really, you should do it as well in the first part, the prime student driver, the CDL training portion. You should be in contact as well, because If you don't feel you're ready to come back and take the test to get your CDL, no one should force you to come back and maybe fail that first time. But safety clarified what they're going to look for that would not allow you to come back right at that minimum number of miles. And basically it comes down to what you would think it would come down to: accidents, incidents, and tickets. You can have 0 of those. And if you're curious, there is a difference between an accident and an incident. An accident is going to be something that, just think about it. It's an accident. You collide with another car. You are in, property damage, something along those lines. An incident may be property damage as well, but there's no damage to your truck. There may be something where there is damage to your truck and not to property. There may be a spill from your truck that may be an incident. So there are things like that that differentiate between accidents and incidents. You may run into. I had a situation. It was considered a not, and there's a difference between at fault and not at fault accidents and incidents as well. I had a customer where you buzz in, you talk to them, they open an electronic gate for me, I pulled forward and the gate closed down. Well, that's considered an incident, but it's not my fault that their gate prematurely closed and the gate broke. Well, I'm not responsible for their gate not functioning correctly. It still goes on your record, but it's not an at-fault incident in that particular situation. You can have a spill that's not your fault. In fact, I was at a customer one time where the customer happened to be training another unloader, and the customer opened up their valve. So it had nothing to do with our equipment whatsoever. The customer opened their valve and product came out of their end. Well, you're going to make documentation of that, and that's going to go on your record. But the reason you do that is the old cover your behind, because if at some point that particular customer comes and says, well, we have this product spill and we don't know where it came from, you report the fact that this customer, this is what happened. The customer is the one who opened the valve and product ended up on the ground. The next day a different person could be working and they see product on the ground and all they know is John Ogren was here with a Prime truck. Well, let's blame him and call Prime and tell them that they need to come and clean up. And except for the fact that you report this is what happened. So you have a documentation that you covered yourself before they even reached out to Prime to say, how come there's product on the ground? So there's a difference between accidents, there's a difference between incidents, there's a difference between at fault and not at fault. And obviously tickets, another thing. And then critical events, and I have an entire video on critical events. You can have no more than 2 critical events. So 0 accidents, 0 incidents, and no more than 2 critical events. If you go above of those thresholds, safety is going to tell you need to have additional miles on your training. Obviously, if your trainer doesn't feel you're ready, you're going to have additional miles put onto your training. If you don't feel you're ready, you can say, I want another week, I want another month of training. If you're fleet manager and conversing with both the trainer and the trainee, there's the thing, if you feel you're ready, the trainer feels you're ready, you talk to the fleet manager and the fleet manager asks the questions, and you might be giving different answers, and the fleet manager says, well, I'm not quite clear on why you're saying this and why you're saying that. The fleet manager may ask the trainer, how many times has he backed up? And the trainer says, he's backed up every place we go. I think he's ready. He may ask you, well, how often do you back up? And you say, well, not that often, but I still think I'm ready to upgrade. So you have the trainer saying you're ready to upgrade. You have the trainee saying they're ready to upgrade, but the fleet manager says, well, but he's telling me he hasn't backed up at customers a lot. Maybe he's not ready to upgrade into his own truck. Anyway, getting a little bit deeper into that than I wanted. The big story is the reduction in miles. Again, Prime increased the miles, I think it was a little less than 2 years ago. when I went through, it was 30,000 miles. And it was 30,000 miles for tanker at that time as well. About 2 years ago, they upped it to 50,000 miles, 35,000 at that time for the tanker division, simply because tanker does tend to have fewer miles than reefer and flatbed does. We operate mainly in the eastern part of the U.S. as opposed to all 48 states. And there are a number of reasons. Trying to grow the company at this particular time, there's a tremendous amount of demand for capacity. Capacity is volume inside of a trailer. There's a lot of demand for capacity right now in the trucking industry. How do you cover demand? You get additional trucks on the road. How do you get additional trucks on the road? You need more drivers. So to be able to grow the company with more drivers, part of the reason that Prime slowed down and increased the mileage was to slow down. They were having a hard time getting trucks. There wasn't as much capacity a couple of years ago in 2019, so they increased the training miles. Now there's a lot of capacity, and that's Prime's prerogatives. They can decide to do what they want. It's their company. It's Mr. Lowe's company. And at this time, it makes the most sense for them to reduce those miles. They didn't increase the miles because they didn't think people were getting enough training in 30,000 miles. They increased the training because they wanted to slow down growth. Well, now it's the point where, okay, we can get back to growing the company again because we're busy. And so that's why they've reduced it back to 30,000 miles. They felt that people were getting adequate training at 30,000 miles before, so you're going to still get that adequate training at 30,000 miles right now. So that's the big update. Like I said, I had a whole bunch of things written down here that I had talked about. Not a ton of it is huge information. You know, I don't think we necessarily need to do a DAB. I know I've done those in the past where I've done a driver advisory board kind of recap. If you have questions on driver advisory board, you certainly ask in the comment section below. If you have any questions about the training update, you can ask in the comment section below. You can send me an email. There's a link to an email address down there for me. I will do my best to get you answers. You can obviously ask questions of the driver advisory board itself. And obviously, if you have a question and want to come to Prime, you can ask me, or you can call a recruiter. And I have a link to the application in the description. If you want to come to Prime, take you right to the application. We'll get you guys fixed up. And like I said, you will be under that new training program. Anyone that's at Prime right now, if you're at 20,000 miles, you don't have to wait to 50. Now you just have to get to 30,000 miles minimum, and then they'll start that process of the trainer, the trainee, fleet manager, safety will start reviewing, are they ready to upgrade into their own truck? So that's going forward as of now. Is the new training update is 30,000 miles for reefer, 25,000 miles if you're going through flatbed. Hope you found this interesting. Hope you get something out of this. Again, if you have questions, comments, concerns, comment or email me below. And if you want to come to Prime, click on that link, take you right to the application. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll talk to you next time. I have a couple other things that I'd like to do videos on, so trying to get back to doing some more videos here in the near future. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you next time.